Let's go, man.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. What is going on, guys? So happy to be back. I hope you had a great Wednesday. I did. Want to go ahead and start off by giving out shout outs to people in the chat. And guys, yes, we will do call in tonight. So stay tuned for that. What's going on? Big Cat's Corner says Tiger Love. Did you watch Tiger King, Big Cat's Corner? I watched Tiger King. That was something else. If you guys haven't seen that documentary, you need to watch it. If you want to laugh, that is a trip. Hello, John says, hi, Sabby. What's going on? Hannah G says, Kshama is a real one. I agree. We'll get into that tonight. Shout out to Norma says, BRIE defends Matt. Yes, she does. We're going to get into that story as well. What's going on? Ben, who's a Sabby member, says, I bet Kshama told the DSA right where to go. She is the real deal. What's going on? SG says, hi, everyone. Greetings, KD7. Kshama taking on the DSA. I love it. What's going on? Larez says, hello, Sabby, Eric, Sabby fam. Happy Thursday. Unbelievable and unconscionable how DSA has treated Kshama. Yes. Oh, dear. Greetings, Kim says, hi, Sabby. What's going on? Noman says, 10 years ago, AOC's the real deal. Ooh. That was a rough one there, Noman, excuse me. That was a rough one. Shout out to Mastermind says revolutionaries assemble. Greetings. Brandy says, hello, everyone. Shout out to Neo's algorithm. Okay, Sabby comrades calling in the troops. Shout out to Miguel says, peace. What's up, EJOP3? Booze who, folks? What's going on? Tim says, to be do. Shout out to Ilhanner says, hi, Miguel. Miguel, you got some love out here in the chat. Greetings, Angela, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, awesome people. A good Friday Eve to you all. What's going on? Zero Joshua, who's also a Sabby member, says, that's the Star Trek symbol there, I think, and a thumbs up. Shout out to Kathy, says, hi, Miguel. Miguel, people like you. People like you, Miguel. What's going on? Casey sends solidarity and fire. Shout out to Want to See More, says, hello, fam. What's going on? Danny says, Angela, my computer says it's Thursday. Sorry to be a bearer of bad news. Yeah, it is Thursday. Shout out to Roger Meadows says, Scooby Dooby Doo, currently working on the ballot initiatives for you. So as Ray Charles said, it will do what it do. Thank you so much for that, Roger. I'll be going over those next week again, you guys. Shout out to Osito says, hello, fam. Greetings, Mr. X says, hello, all. What is up, Wary? Hey, everybody. Greetings, Joe says, good evening, all. Shout out to Vipapale. Was BRIE's defense in her latest bad faith video post? No, this was actually on Rising. But we're going to get into it. We're going to get there. What's going on? Pachico Rone, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, Sabby and everybody. All right. Shout out to Notori, says, love and fire. Greetings. John McKinney, thank you so much for the super chat. I am very sad to say, but my dog Summer, a yellow lab, just passed away yesterday. My other dog, Walter, a pug, is sad and lonely. I'm so sorry to hear that, John. Yeah, animals can tell, So your pug, Walter, probably knows what has happened, They can sense these things. And thank you for this super chat as well. On the one hand, I don't know if I'm ready for another, but on the other hand, I think Walter needs someone to make him not so lonely. What should I do? I say give it a bit before you get another pet. It's interesting. A friend of mine went through this as well. She lost her dog, and I was like, are you going to get another one? And she said she wanted another one, but she didn't want to replace the dog that she had. But then a couple months later, she did get another dog. And then she got another dog a couple months ago, too, actually. So now she has two dogs. That's my take on that. That's my take on that. Okay. Let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Guys, as I always tell you, you keep the lights on around here. Thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here, and they're also scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. Big love, big love. Awesome. Let's do the damn thing. Really quick, one thing I want to do, I just want to check something on Rockfin really quick. Just want to pop out that live chat. Used to be a way to pop it out. I don't know if we do this anymore. Oh, well. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what are we talking about tonight? I got a lot of stories for you, and we're doing call-ins. So tonight is going to be a busy show. Busy, 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 busy. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, tonight we are discussing Brianna Joy Gray defends Matt Taibbi. Interesting story there. It's funny because before I saw this clip, I was on Fault Lines earlier this morning, and we were talking about this exact same thing. Similar topic. So they had reached out to talk about the same topic. So it was interesting. We're also going to discuss Khanna on free speech. Let's see where he stands on that. That is also in reference to the Twitter files release that has happened. We're also going to discuss Kshama Sawant versus Democratic Socialists of America, also known as DSA. Yes, that happened. We're going to get into that. I'm also going to discuss Karen Bass housing issue. What is Karen Bass trying to do in Los Angeles? And is this a good thing? I'm going to show you the pros and the cons about that tonight. And last but not least, we are going to discuss UK railroad worker strike. Yes, it has happened. They're doing the damn thing. And I can't wait to get into that story. So let's go ahead and get started with the first story here. So first up, let's talk about this strike that's happening in the UK, because it's actually not just the railroad workers. It's also the nurses have joined them in solidarity on this strike as well. And this is exactly what we were talking about that we would want to happen here in the US. If people across different industries decide to join in solidarity together and go on strike together, the UK is doing that, and it's making a lot of waves and it's making a lot of news. Let's get into the article, and then I have a clip I want to show you as well. Now, this is from The Guardian. Defend rail jobs, pay, conditions. Defend the rail jobs, pay, and conditions. So these are the issues that they are striking over. UK strike standoffs continues as Sanak says no change in pay stance. Let's go on. The standoff between UK ministers, bosses, and unions over pay showed no sign of reaching resolution on the first day of 4 weeks of planned rail strikes. Now, these strikes are done by thousands of rail workers. You guys hear that? Thousands of workers. Not 50, not 100, but thousands. RMT members will again bring train services around Britain to a halt on Wednesday. So that was yesterday. While Royal Mail workers in the CWU will carry out their third of 6 days of walkouts in the run up to Christmas. So I covered this about a week ago that the postal workers there in the UK, it's called the Royal Mail, but the postal workers there also have gone on strike. Nurses are due to strike action on Thursday. That was today. Rishi Sunak reiterated that the government was unable to shift its position on pay, implying that the only way to end the widespread strikes across the railway and other sectors would be for unions to back down. See, this is what we wanted here. You see what I mean? They have their back up against the wall here. So this is really how you make an impact on the economy, on the government. This is really how you do it. In comments to his cabinet, the prime minister said, while the government will do all we can to minimize disruption, the only way we can stop it completely is by unions going back around the table and calling off these strikes. See, in the UK, it's a little bit different because this is what we wanted the railroad workers to do here in the US. Well, by we, I mean mainly myself and other people who, are advocating for a general strike. This is what we wanted them to do because, see, when you disrupt the supply chain, that affects the entire economy in the country. That is not to say that other strikes are not valuable or are not useful. They are. But shutting down transportation is a big one. This is why in the United States, they have that rule. Congress has that rule that the railroad workers, if for whatever reason they cannot reach an agreement with the union, then Congress will come in and create a contract for them so that they can get back to work. That's why they have that law in place. Let's go on. Rail bosses and unions signaled that they would not budge in the pay dispute, with the general secretary of the RMT, this is Mick Lynch, saying there was no deal in sight. They're holding firm. And I have to tell you guys, in the UK, I have a friend that lives in the UK. So I've talked to him about this off and on. And my friend told me that right now, he cannot confirm if they will even be able to have rent this winter. So it's not even just the workers frustrated over their pay. Because of this issue with Russia and Ukraine, this is affecting everything and everyone. So that also means their heating supply. Remember, we have the issue with that pipeline. That pipeline is cut off. So how are they supposed to get heat, right? So what else do you expect the people to do? The people are going to rise up. Now, here is a list of upcoming strikes. So they have a calendar here. Transportation is red. Health is blue. Education has also joined on this, is green. The mail service is yellow. Energy is purple. And civil service is gray. They don't want to call it this, but I'm going to call it this. Basically, they're having a general strike. So look at the calendar, guys. Look at what's been happening here. It started off with education, and then you can see transportation joined, the mail service joined. These are different days throughout the week. Look at how they've coordinated their strikes. This is absolutely amazing, amazing. And look, if you notice, these strikes are going to continue throughout Christmas and New Year's Eve. Thursday, December 15th, that's today. This is what happened. The nurses went on strike, up to 100,000 nurses. Royal Mail, again, CWU, around 115,000 postal workers. Energy, GMB, more than 200 workers at the energy company. Civil service, PCS, staff at the RPA are on strike. So are the DVSA in Scotland and Northern Ireland. This is how you do it. Do you see how they coordinated this? That's what I'm talking about. The latest wave of strikes across the network by 40,000 members of the RMT at Network Rail and at 14 train operators left passengers facing severely reduced services. Another 48-hour strike follows later in the week. Sunak told ministers that the winter would be a challenging period to get through. An official readout of his comments said, he said the government had been fair and reasonable in agreeing independent recommendations for public sector pay raises. Obviously not reasonable if they're on strike. And in facilitating further discussions with unions and employers. His official spokesperson said there were plans to mitigate any disruption, but it was for unions to decide whether they want to keep inflicting this sort of damage on the public. Let's pay close attention to this here. Damage on the public. This is another example where they are trying to demonize the workers. That's what's happening here. Damage to the public. What about the damage that is being done to the workers who are not being paid what they should be paid, who have poor working conditions? What about those damages? They're focused on what the public is going through. But the public wouldn't even experience that if they would just pay people a living wage. Sorry, but it is what it is. The Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, said people faced another pandemic-style virtual Christmas as a result of this industrial action. Notice they won't call it a general strike. You guys noticing this? I think they're afraid if they call it a general strike, it's going to scare people, right? As a result of the industrial action with an overtime ban at train operators also affecting passenger services throughout the rest of the month until strikes in early January. Lynch said the union would press ahead with strikes and review at the end of that if there's no settlement on the table, and we'll decide what our next steps are. But at the moment, there is no settlement to be had. Very interesting. I have a clip I want to show you as well so you can actually see this in action. I try to show like an article and a clip if I can, because I can read something, but it's better for you to see some of these things. Shout out to Neo's algorithm. Thank you for the super chat. Sabby, we might disagree on electoralism, but I started a YouTube explaining an area in 8 minutes on how I would unscrew electoralism. Close to 100 friends have joined. Could you consider live reacting? I don't usually do reactions on this channel. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think someone at, I think JB might be doing this. Someone at RBN is doing this, I think. And here's JB now. JB says, in British accent, there will be no, I can't do it. There would be no, I can't. There will be no Christmas. I'm sorry. I can't do it, JB. I tried. You could do this better than me. So let's look at this clip here to see exactly what this looks like. Shout out to the railroad workers, the nurses, the educators, the civil service peeps. Shout out to all of them in the UK who have decided to go on strike. Shut it down.
Here in the UK, a fresh wave of strike action that's expected to cause major disruption to key services in the run-up to Christmas has begun. Around 40,000 rail workers who are members of the RMT union are taking part in the first of two 48-hour stoppages as part of a long-running dispute about jobs, pay and conditions. Only about 20% of the country's normal rail service is expected to run. That means 4 out of every 5 trains will be cancelled. Many parts of Britain, including most of Scotland and Wales, will have no trains at all. And there are unlikely to be any trains running anywhere this evening. Network Rail has warned that trains that are running are likely to be very busy, and it's urging passengers to travel only if absolutely necessary. Our transport correspondent Katie Austin has the details.
I just thought about something. If you have to take the train to get to work, this is going to affect your commute to work as well. So this doesn't just impact supply chain. This also disrupts labor at other sectors. Even if you're not participating in the strike, if you have to take the train to get to work, this is going to delay your time to get to work. Those trains will be packed. You probably have to wait for the next one, which could be another 20, 25 minutes, however long it takes, because some of the trains have been reduced now. Just think about that. This is going to make a lot of people angry. I love it.
At York's Christmas market, festive cheer is in good supply. But for people hoping to get here by train, more travel misery is in store. Local hotels worry strikes have put some visitors off.
They've had individual bookings cancelled, conferences, meetings cancelled. This happening just in the week before Christmas is obviously going to hurt, because everybody's trying to bolster their bank balance in order to deal with the first quarter of next year.
On strike days this week, that's today, tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, only about 20% of Britain's usual train services will run, and trains will start later and finish much earlier than they normally do. There'll also be some knock-on disruption on Thursday and Sunday mornings.
Rail workers in the RMT have already walked out on 8 days this year in a dispute the union says is over pay, protecting jobs and working conditions. Passengers now face 4 weeks of disruption. There are 2 48-hour train strikes this week. An overtime ban at 14 train companies from Sunday is expected to cause some cancellations, and a strike at Network Rail will see services finish even earlier than usual on Christmas Eve and start late on the 27th. And more national walkouts are planned in January. The rail industry says changes to
See, this is going into 2023, you guys.
Working practices are needed to fund higher pay. RMT members have now voted to reject what Network Rail called its best and final offer. The union called it substandard. And RMT leaders have already turned down an offer from the train operating companies group and blamed the government for insisting on conditions it said weren't acceptable. The rail minister said the government had played its part in trying to resolve the dispute.
We want an end to these strikes. They will damage the railway, they will damage workers' security, and we're offering security. There will be no compulsory redundancies for the workforce. There will be a generous pay rise for them. The modernisation approach has been accepted by some unions. Our message to the RMT is come on board.
Oh, it's like I almost believe him. Almost.
A new year is coming swiftly into view, but an end to disruption is not. Katie Austin, BBC News in York.
And let's join our news correspondent Theo Leggett, who is in Woking for us. And Theo, the boss of the RMT, Mick Lynch, was talking earlier about the art of negotiation. Those negotiations clearly very, very difficult, long running now. What's it going to take to break the logjam?
I have to pause here. You guys see the hat that he's wearing? I think this is called a fedora. I think that's what those hats are called. My dad used to wear those hats like back in the day when I was a kid. Maybe they're back in style again.
It's very hard to see what will break the logjam at the moment, Anita. As you know, we've had 8 days of strikes already. Now we've got this strike, another one later this week, 2 more in early January, and a Network Rail strike over the Christmas period, which will delay engineering works. Now, part of this is about pay, and there are offers on the table from the RMT and from the Rail Delivery Group, which represents the train operating companies, and from Network Rail. But the unions haven't accepted those offers, and there's a reason for that. They say it's not just about pay, it's about terms and conditions, working practices. So, for example, when it comes to the rail companies, they want to introduce driver-only trains, or at least that's what the union says. And the union says that's a deal breaker. And likewise with Network Rail, there are changes to working conditions being proposed that the unions say they simply can't accept. And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any sort of movement. And the unions are also saying that that Network Rail and the rail delivery group seem to be shackled a little bit by the government. They're not able to negotiate in the way that would normally happen. So there seems to be intransigence at the moment. There seems to be a logjam. And nobody seems willing to compromise. So it does look as though disruption to the railways is going to continue at the very least until the 9th of January and quite possibly beyond then as well.
It's
okay. This is important to know. And this is what I was saying. It's not just about the pay. It's also about the working conditions. So there's a couple of things that they're asking for here. And I think they have the right to ask for it. Imagine what would have happened if the railroad workers would have been able to go on strike right here in the United States. You want to talk about really making some noise, right? Like that could really like bring some fire, some energy around here. What's that? Page boy, not fedora. Oh, okay. Not a fedora. Dave says that's not a fedora. Fedora has a brim around the whole thing. Oh. Flat cap or cabbie. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Stands at the moment and certainly for the foreseeable future, Theo, as if this is coming down to a battle of wills. Who is prepared to stick with the course, whether it's the government or the unions?
Absolutely. The government and the train operating companies and Network Rail insist that modernisation of the railways is what they're after. They say it's necessary. The railways are losing money, particularly after the COVID pandemic. So changes to working practices are going to be required, particularly if more money is going to be provided for people who work on the railways. But what the unions are saying is that yes, they need more money. This is a time of high inflation. Cost of living is going up, and it's not just railway workers who are affected by that, obviously, and that's why we're seeing strikes across the economy. But they also say they're not willing to sacrifice certain things. There are deal breakers out there, some of which they insist include safety critical services. So at the moment, as you say, it's a standoff. Somebody has to back down. There's no sign of anybody backing down at the moment.
Well, I sincerely hope that the unions do not back down. I hope they're not the ones that give in, because they really have a chance here to really make some noise. Really make some noise. I told you guys, what did I tell you? If you get other industries on board to strike with you, and if you shut down transportation, this is your pathway to a general strike. Yes, people will get angry. May make people a bit uncomfortable, but if they pay people what they should be paid and they fix the working conditions, they would not be in the situation to begin with. They got money. There's money coming in the UK and it's going somewhere. Let's be real. Let's be real. All right, I'm going to go to some comments here. Where he says JB will cover Neo's video on Tuesday on his channel. Yeah, okay, I thought so. I knew someone said that they were going to do. Bill, a fair offer. How about the rail companies open the books so we can see the exact profits and then we can decide whether or not it is fair? Open the books. That's a good point. Thank you for the super chat, Steve. Sabby, did you hear that Debbie Lusignan, the sane progressive, has died? What? Oh my God. So sad. Many of us loved her. No, I did not know about that. I'll have to look that up. Oh my gosh. That's unfortunate. Good grief. Ay. Let me go ahead and check out Rockfin. See how these guys are doing here. Boop boop. Think we're good on Rockfin. Okay, Dave on Rockfin said that's a beret, sort of like a scally cap. Oh, like a raspberry beret, Dave? She wore a raspberry beret. Kind you find in a secondhand store. Raspberry beret. Okay, anyway, that being said, I want to make a connection here as well to the railroad workers in the United States because some news came out about them today. It turns out Not only are they unhappy about not getting the 7-day sick leave, but they're still making their voices heard. They made a decision recently about union leadership. Check this bad boy out. Rail workers oust union president who backed labor deal. Guys, I can't make this up. I can't. Now, this is from More Perfect Union. Listen to this. In a stunning upset, it's a stunning upset. The Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, the 28,000 member union of railroad workers, has elected a new president. Eddie Hall, a local officer out of Division 28 in Tucson, Arizona, won against incumbent Dennis Pierce with 53% of membership-wide vote. Hall will take office on January 1st, pending official certification of the results, and will lead the larger of the two unions that make up the Teamsters Rail Conference. The surprise victory is the latest fallout from a national freight rail showdown in which some 60,000 rail workers had a contract imposed on them. In the BLEAT, the second largest union involved in negotiations, members ratified a deal, but many members were unhappy with the outcome. In an interview, Hall said his election spoke to rank and file frustrations that leadership failed to listen to the membership throughout the negotiations. Let's highlight that. There it is. Leadership failed to listen to the membership throughout the negotiations. This is what we were talking about. This is exactly what I was saying. So when Jamal Bowman and AOC, when they say, well, this is what the workers were asking for, they're referring to the union leadership. As you guys saw, I interviewed the railroad workers, and they said the majority of them did not vote for this. They said they did vote to go on strike. So just like that, they're making changes already. You gotta love it. We have a union, but members are not involved. I am hoping to get out and listen to the membership. And this is one of the things I will say as well about unions. And I've heard this from other people that have been a part of unions as well. Some of these union leaders are making bank, you guys. Some of these union leaders are making like 6 figures, and the members are not making half that. So that's just something to keep in mind, that this does happen sometimes where the union leaders don't actually listen to the union members, and they do what they think is best. And some of these union leaders, and I've heard this before too from other people, some of these union leaders sometimes have no problem selling out the other members. Again, a lot of these guys, they're making bank. So that happened. They're already making steps to make changes. You got to love it. Got to love it. Where he says some union leaders are more in line with management than with rank and file membership. That's right. That's right. I've never been a part of a union, but I know people that have, like some people, some family members that I have, they have been in unions like their whole life. So, you know, Just Z1 says they be in bed with management. Yeah. And I got to tell you something too, when it comes to management, 9 times out of 10, management backs management. That includes union leaders too. 9 times out of 10, they back other members of management. Unfortunately, that's how it works sometimes. Bill says, essentially, the entire existing union infrastructure is broken. We need all new unions. Kilyuri Gorgie says, I was a Teamster. Awesome. I didn't know that. I did not know that, Kilyuri Gorgies. That is good to know. All right, we're moving into our next story here. Now, shout out to K-Study QB for this clip. Ro Khanna has been questioned recently. He was on Fox News. I was surprised by that. Ro Khanna will go anywhere, huh? He was on Fox News, and he was questioned about the Twitter files that have been released from Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss. And I want to say the other guy's name is Schronberger. I forget the other guy's name. But anywho, Ro Khanna was questioned about it. And I want you to hear what Khanna has to say in reference to free speech, because I've seen him kind of waver on this. I've seen him also kind of use word salad sometimes when he's talking about what he thinks should happen with free speech. But Case Study QB clipped this. Let's hear what Khanna has to say about the Twitter files and how he feels about free speech on social media platforms. Really quick, guys, go ahead and hit that like button. That helps me with the algo. And let's go in.
I want to switch gears because you're there in, well, you're not there in Silicon Valley right now, but you represent Silicon Valley. And now we're learning that Twitter banned permanently President Trump when it appeared as though there'd been no violation that would trigger a permanent ban. Barry Weiss tweeting out, quote, as an FYI, Safety has assessed the DJT tweet above and determined that there is no violation of our policies at this time. No violation of our policies at this time.
Just want to pause there for those who are not aware of what he is discussing here. So this was part of, I think this was part 3 of the Twitter files that I covered. If it wasn't part 3, it was part 5. Either way, those were somewhat similar. But one of the things that had been discovered through those Twitter files was the fact that it turns out that when Trump was removed from Twitter, it actually was not because of the event in January. It was because they had already decided that they were going to remove him before that event even happened. And it was because of some of the things that he had retweeted. I know one of the things was he had retweeted something about Hunter Biden, the whole Hunter Biden laptop story, that kind of thing. And what is that? Jay says no volume. No one else is saying that. I think everyone else can hear. Yeah, I think it's just you, Jay. Yeah, Miguel says it was fine. Yeah. So that was one of the things that was released, was the fact that they lied when they said he was removed because of the event in January. It was already decided before that event had happened that they were going to remove him. So that was big news, right? So that's what he's referring to, and he's trying to get Khanna's take on that.
Yet he was banned permanently because senior management at Twitter said, no, it doesn't matter whether or not he violated the policies. We got to kick him off the platform. Do you have a problem with that?
I have to look at all of the facts, and we need to release all of the facts. But obviously, if there was not a violation of policy and if it was just an arbitrary decision, then yes, I would. My view is that what I was told is that Twitter found that some of those tweets were inciting violence, and that's why they made that decision. But if there is...
Let's backtrack here because I just caught something that he said. Listen to what he says in response at the very beginning and watch what he says later on. Listen to this.
Because senior management at Twitter said, no, it doesn't matter whether or not he violated the policies. We got to kick him off the platform. Do you have a problem with that?
I have to look at all of the facts, and we need to release all of the facts. But
okay. He just said he needs to look at all the facts and they have to release all the facts. This is in reference to Trump being kicked off of Twitter, not because of the events that happened in January, but it had already been decided before that. And then they also had released the fact that he actually did not violate Twitter's policies, but they removed him anyway. Khanna just told you, right, that he needs to look at all the facts. But listen to what he says next.
obviously, if there was not a violation of policy and if it was just an arbitrary decision, then yes, I would. My view is that what I was told is that Twitter found that some of those tweets were inciting violence. And
this part right here. Pay attention to it.
Policy, and if it was just an arbitrary decision, then yes, I would. My view is that what I was told is that Twitter found that some of those tweets were inciting violence, and
that part. He just told you what he was told is that Twitter found that some of those tweets were inciting violence, right? Okay. That's what he was told. But right before that, he just told you when they asked him whether or not Trump should have been removed, now that you know, or now that it has been revealed that he did not violate Twitter policies, Ro Khanna's response was, I need to look at all the facts. Why is it that when they are asking him whether or not Trump should have been removed, now that you know that they come out and they say that he didn't violate any of the policies, why is it his response to that is, I need to look at all the facts? But then later on, he proceeds to tell you that I was told that he incited violence. So why is it okay for Ro Khanna to believe what he was told about Trump inciting violence, but it wasn't okay for Ro Khanna to believe what was just told to him about the files that have been released that show he did not violate Twitter policies? Somebody make that make sense to me. So that right there goes to show you something. And Ro Khanna was a lawyer, correct? That right there tells you something. That tells you he's willing to believe what he is told if it's in the favor of his party, but he's not willing to believe what he is told if it's in favor of the other party. When it comes to the other party, in favor of the other party, he needs facts. Pay attention, guys. Pay attention to stuff like this. Let's go back in.
That's why they made that decision. But if there is evidence that that wasn't the case, then we absolutely need to look at it. It needs to be consistently applied, not based on viewpoint discrimination, based on what someone believes.
Well,
see, now he's letting you know that if there is evidence that that's not the case, then something needs to be, something needs to be revised there. He needs evidence. But at the very beginning of the discussion, he just told you there was evidence. Am I the only one that's missing this? Am I the only one that's missing this? You already have evidence. Have we not seen this? We went over this on this show. People have gone over this on other shows as well. The evidence is already there. Ro Khanna doesn't want to look at it. So why you need evidence if the evidence is already there? You don't have to dig for the evidence. It's on Twitter. All you have to do is go to Matt Taibbi's page or go to Barry Weiss's page. These Twitter files, they're pinned. Just go look at the information that was released. And Matt Taibbi wrote a Substack article about it. So what more evidence does Ro Khanna need to see? And look, I don't even like Trump, but I'm just saying the evidence is already there right in front of you.
According to Barry Weiss's reporting, they had a problem with Donald Trump thinking that it was inciting violence, but the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei incited violence against Israel. He was left on the platform. The former Malaysian prime minister said it was okay to kill millions of French people. He was left on the platform. There seems to be some pretty selective banning going on here.
Well, I'm not saying that those other people should have been allowed on. I mean, if there are leaders, regardless, that are inciting violence and imminent threats of violence, then and that's the policy to remove them, then they should be removed. So,
but he's not asking you if you believe if those other accounts should have been allowed on Twitter. What he is showing you is that there is bias there. There was bias towards certain political views. And I talked about this on Fault Lines earlier this morning, but it's not just conservative views. And I want to be very clear. It's not just people that have conservative viewpoints or those that are far right. People who have anti-war voices, anti-imperialists, a lot of leftists, progressives, socialists, Marxists were also suppressed on Twitter. Now, Matt Taibbi talked about this with Russell Brand. I saw that interview. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Matt Taibbi talked about that. And I'm going to tell you what Matt Taibbi said in reference to the other voices that I just mentioned to you. We'll get into that tomorrow. But still, that was not what he was asking Ro Khanna. So this is Ro Khanna refusing to acknowledge the bias.
He was left on the platform. The former Malaysian prime minister said it was okay to kill millions of French people. He was left on the platform. There seems to be some pretty selective banning going on here.
Well, I'm not saying that those other people should have been allowed on. I mean, if there are leaders, regardless, that are inciting violence and imminent threats of violence, then and that's the policy to remove them, then they should be removed. So we have to look at all of the evidence, but we need to make sure that we're looking at all of the emails and making sure that they're consistently applied. I've always said that the application needs to be consistent and it needs to be transparent.
So does this deserve to be investigated by Congress?
I have said that I am open to looking at the broader issue of free speech to make sure that censorship is not taking place both against conservatives and liberals. It's happened to both, and to making sure at the same time that you have respect for people so you don't have anti-Semitism or racism or hate spewing on these platforms.
So
that means no. When he was asking him, he's talking to him about whether or not this should be investigated by Congress. And Ro Khanna says, I'm willing to look at the broader issue of free speech and censorship. That means no. He does this all the time. He never wants to just say yes or no. Just say no. I can't, man. I can't. I'm sorry. Let me go back a little bit so we can catch up. Okay.
And to making sure at the same time that you have respect for people so you don't have anti-Semitism or racism or hate spewing on these platforms.
So why did Democrats in Congress never care to investigate this? It's going to fall to Republicans.
We did have social media hearings. David Cicilline had them. We had them at Energy and Commerce. But I'm open to continuing to do them as long as they're fair and consider the whole issue.
Congressman, I'm sorry. We're going to run. Thanks. We'll be back.
Now he got to go. We got to go. This is so funny. He says, like, well, we did have social media hearings in Congress. We got to go. We got to go. Bill says you did have social media hearings. I guess they didn't accomplish anything. Right. Like they did. Jack Dorsey, they met with Jack Dorsey of Twitter. They met with Mark Zuckerberg a couple years ago from Facebook. So it's just, and look, Ro Khanna leaves with a big smile on his face and like, got him. Oh dear, let me stop. But I think this speaks to a larger issue. Jack Dorsey he has apologized recently for not being transparent with people about this issue, with people being suppressed and people being shadow banned on Twitter. He did lie about that. I played the interview for you the other day, showing that he was on the Today Show a couple years ago when he said that they don't shadow ban people. That was not true, obviously, from what we see from these Twitter files. I actually would be curious to see if people are willing to do this with Facebook or any other social media platform. I'm curious to hear about that. Who's being shadow banned and suppressed on Facebook? Because Facebook will just remove people like that. I know people that have been removed from Facebook because they didn't have their full name. Like, you guys know, some people on Facebook don't use their real name because of their employer, right? They don't want their employer to find them on Facebook. They don't want their boss to find them on Facebook. I blocked my boss on Facebook. Look, let me tell you, this is bad, but I did it. When I started my last job, when I first started, I looked for supervisors that I had on Facebook, and I went ahead and blocked those people so they wouldn't find my account. I don't need my supervisors finding me on Facebook. I'm sorry. That's a little bit more personal. So that happened, and none of them were on Twitter. So it just is what it is. But this does speak to a larger issue here. And I don't know, in reference to having Congress look at something like this, they could take it to a whole other extreme here, because they could make the censorship even worse if you think about it. So let me go to some of the comments here. Miguel says, Ro Khanna will go anywhere. He even came on your show, Sabby. That's true. I'm not one of the larger shows. Yeah, that is true. Terry says, ownership of the means of production is what we need. 100%, Terry. Miguel says, mastermind hour, clever. Paul Stewart, Ro is looking for presidential campaign money from the Twitter oligarchs. Listen, like I said, he's the only one that he'll come on to independent media. He does not mind. Let me check Rockfin really quick. See, it's the rock to the fin. It's the rock to the fin. Rock to the fin. Rock to the fin. All right. Roger Meadows. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. It's the rock to the fin. It's the rock to the fin. Rock to the fin. And let's do pop out. Boop de boop. Hooray! All right, let me go ahead and share. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Thank you so much. I am in a silly mood tonight, guys, and I am sorry. I'm just in one of those moods. All right, Roger Meadows says, I think a fedora was what MJ wore in the Smooth Criminal video. Really? Also, since your dad is a brother, he probably wore a Kango. He did have a Kango. Probably wore a Kango of the Cool Mo D, not LL Cool J variety. Also, no, we as workers don't need to start over with unions. Workers need ownership of these companies, time to bypass unionizing and start cooperatizing. That's right. That's right. Well said, Roger. Well said. Yes, it was a Kango. Do you guys remember Kango? That was like a thing. All right, let's get into our next story. Now, this is about Karen Bass. She did win the mayor race in LA, and she promised to tackle the homeless issue in Los Angeles. For those who are not aware, LA has a significantly large homeless population and tent communities, but they are not alone. This is happening in cities all across the United States, including mine in Boston. She had an interview recently on Morning Joe. Now, I want you to hear her plan to tackle homelessness in Los Angeles. And then I'm going to talk about the con, because I want you to hear the pro, and then I want you to hear the con, because there is a downfall to what she wants to do, something that maybe she has not thought about. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Let's get into it.
Where, in her first official act, newly sworn-in Mayor Karen Bass declared a state of emergency on homelessness in Los Angeles. This comes as the state has been trying to combat the issue with over 69,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County this year alone. And Mayor Bass joins us now. First of all, may I congratulate you just on being the first on a number of levels as mayor of Los Angeles. It's not.
I just want to add in here 69,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. And those are just the ones that are accounted for, by the way. Not everyone that's homeless is accounted for.
The first time in your career you've been a first, but it's wonderful, very know your value moment. We've been watching the homelessness crisis unfold across the country. New York City is trying some unconventional, controversial ways of dealing with homelessness and actually taking those who are deemed mentally ill to a hospital and holding them until a care plan is prepared. I mean,
that's ridiculous. I talked about this as well. Eric Adams has lost his damn mind. And to answer your question, Deneen, what percentage are Black? 40% last time I checked of the homeless population are African American, which is insane because we're only like 13% of the population.
These are hard to execute ideas and policies. I'm wondering, as you declare a state of emergency, how you think you will be able to get as many people off the street as possible in a short amount of time as possible.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. And you know, this has been a problem in Los Angeles for a while, and it has exploded to the point of the numbers that you talked about. And we know that every day, 5 people don't wake up off these streets. So what the emergency order will do is it will allow me to expedite the building process. It will allow me to take over certain property, and it will allow me to be able to get building done quickly. That is one of our problems. However, in the meantime, there are still people on the streets. So while we are fast tracking building, we are going to launch a program in 2 days called Inside Safe. And it's basically built upon the lessons learned from the pandemic. I mean, we have thousands of hotel rooms and motel rooms in Los Angeles. And when the motels were vacant, the city and the county did master leasing, took over entire motels. And that's what we need to do to get people off of the tents in the streets. And just think about it. In America, you have hundreds of thousands of people around the country who pitch tents everywhere and have started living on the streets. This is not acceptable.
People didn't just start living on the streets. And I'm sorry, I have to jump in here and I have to make a statement here. This is not new. Homelessness is not new in this country. This is not something that people just started doing. It's a little bit more evident now because of the pandemic. And yes, the numbers have increased, but this has been going on for years. You can go all the way back years ago, starting with San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi's district has one of the highest homeless populations in the country. So this isn't a new thing. And I just want to be very clear here. I remember when I was a kid, there was always Skid Row. There was always already homeless people. What you are seeing now, you're seeing more homeless people because poverty has increased in this country, because we are living in late stage capitalism. That is why you are seeing more homeless people. More people have been evicted. More people have been laid off. Don't believe me? We just shared a story about a housing complex here in Boston where the tenants were supposed to be kicked out before Christmas. They were going to kick them out right before Christmas. Now, United Front Against Displacement protested, and they were able to delay them removing the residents from that building, but they will still be removed. These are people that live in public housing. These aren't people that are being evicted because they can't pay their rent. These are people that are being removed from public housing because public housing has now become privatized, and you have these investors that are tearing down these buildings and they're building what they call affordable housing, which really isn't affordable for a lot of the people that live in that district. That's another reason why the homeless population is increasing. And Morning Joe isn't going to tell you that, so I have to jump in and say that. Let's go back in.
Mayor Bass, good morning and congratulations to you. What about the mental health piece of this? This is so much of what Mayor Adams is trying to get at here in New York City. Obviously, mental illness surrounds so many of the cases of homelessness in this country. How do you address the root of the problem? It's great to get people shelter. That's the first step and a critical one. But what about next? What's the next step?
Well, first of all, it is important to know that the population that are unhoused are diverse. So, for example, there's thousands of children who are on the streets with women who have fled domestic violence. There's former foster youth that are on the street. There's people in Los Angeles who work full-time jobs who go home to tents because they can't afford the rent. But when it comes to mental illness, and I know we have all seen this on streets where people who are profoundly mentally ill who clearly cannot take care of themselves, and someone needs to take care of them. So in California, we passed legislation called Care Court, which is similar to what Mayor Adams is doing. And I happen to believe very strongly that it is absolutely humane to allow somebody to die on the street when they are profoundly mentally ill. You can tell you can't take care of them. But here's my problem. I do believe it's important to hospitalize people when they're in a crisis, but where are they going to go after that?
So that's the piece that Eric Adams, that I mentioned in reference to Eric Adams, him wanting to retrieve homeless people off the street that they feel are mentally ill, hospitalize them. I don't think this is cool. This is involuntary. It's bullshit. He's getting a lot of pushback for this, by the way. Hospitalize them. But then after that, where do they, like she said, where do they go? Another thing I want to mention as well, she's talking about the mentally ill people that are homeless. How do they know those people that they think are mentally ill are actually mentally ill? Have they been diagnosed? This is an important question. How many of those people are actually mentally ill, and some of them may have other issues that are going on? I don't know, man. This is why I don't like this whole idea of them like picking up people off the street and saying, oh, okay, we think you're mentally ill. Let's put you into a mental hospital. How do you know?
Then raises the issue of building facilities. Now, we already do this. The facilities that we keep people in now who are profoundly mentally ill are jails. And that, I believe, in and of itself is inhumane.
Yeah, and Mayor Bass, congratulations, of course. It seems to me that when you look at the homeless crisis, when you look at, like you said, so many homeless Americans pitching tents and starting to live there in unsafe, unsanitary circumstances, this seems to be an issue that lends itself to public-private partnerships. You know, we've seen in New York City, I know you've seen it out in LA too, but in New York City, we saw a lot of finance leaders step forward and help with schools in Harlem and in other areas. Made a real difference. I'm wondering what sort of public-private partnerships are possible in Los Angeles to help homeless people get off the streets, get help, and get shelter.
No, this is the problem. When I watched this clip, I was like, did he really just advocate for privatizing public communities here? He mentions that there are financial leaders that have stepped up and have tried to help. There have also been financial leaders that have stepped up to take over public housing units. That's Manhattanville in New York City. That's Bromley Heath in Boston. That's Grant Manor in Boston. This idea of allowing private investors to come in and to assist with these efforts is a no-go, because they are not going to do it unless they get something out of it in return, something financially in return. And I want to make this very clear, because some people will hear this and they'll think this is a good idea. This is not a good idea, because let me tell you what is going to happen. You get these private investors. They say, we want to help you with the homeless community. We want to help you with the housing issue. We're going to help you build affordable housing. That sounds great. So they give you the money. They front the money. They help you build the affordable housing. Now that you have the affordable housing, they privatize the public housing because, like I said, they're trying to get paid. So the people in the public housing, they're pushed out, and then they're told, well, you can now apply for the affordable housing. Here's the problem. Affordable housing usually has an income limit, and there's a certain range that you have to be within. You can't make too little. You can't make too much. A lot of the people that are in public housing already make too little. That's why they're in public housing. A lot of them don't make enough to even qualify to get into the affordable housing units. So where are those people supposed to go? This is also how you get more people out on the streets. I cannot believe he's actually recommending this on national television. This is a bad idea. Do you know how many corporations have bought up housing and residences here in Boston? How many private investors have bought up apartment buildings and are renting them out luxury prices to people that can afford it, which are not the people who lived there before they were kicked out and they bought the building? This is terrible. Terrible idea. Now let's see what Karen has to say. Let's see if Karen really in touch with this issue.
Well, that is the only way it can be done, Joe. And it is an extensive public-private partnership that's at work here. So, for example, I mentioned the motel owners.
No. This is such a bad idea. Do you guys see the problem? That is the only way it can be done. You know what Mississippi did to fix the homelessness problem? They decided to build more homes. For those people. This is not rocket science. You do not have to have a PhD to figure this out. Shahid Buttar explained this to me himself in his district in San Francisco, which is Nancy Pelosi's district. You know what he said? We have more homes. We have the housing in San Francisco. Empty homes that are not even being used. Why aren't those people given housing? This is why we need guaranteed housing in this country. This is exactly why. And here goes Karen Bass. She's agreeing with him. Yes, let's advocate for this. This does not work well, you guys. It didn't work well in New York City. It doesn't work well in Boston. It's not going to work well in Los Angeles. You cannot privatize it. You have to leave those people out of the equation. Jeez.
Owners who are making their entire properties available. We have independent nonprofit organizations that actually know how to get people off the streets and into housing. They work with outreach workers who are formerly unhoused. We have a lot of good organizations in Los Angeles, but the fundamental problem is that they don't have the resources or the capacity to address the problem at the scale in which is needed. And so that's part of what we have to do here.
The problem is states like California, particularly cities like Los Angeles, have become too expensive to live in, even for people who are professionals. Same problem in New York City, same problem in Boston. That is the problem.
Mayor Bass, Al Sharpton, again, congratulations. And certainly you know all of our people are ecstatic that you're there. And thank you for going with Reverend K.W. Toulis and the ministers as one of your first appearances as mayor on yesterday. I know you for 20, 25 years, and you're real at heart a civil rights activist. So the tension of how you deal with homelessness and deal with protecting their civil rights, but at the same time removing them, it becomes something that you've got to thread the needle. Eric Adams here is dealing with it. Lori Lightfoot is dealing with it in Chicago. You're dealing with it in L.A. How do you deal with the balance of removing them, but not having police being able to overreach or having people feel there's an overreach, but at the same time not leave people out there to suffer, and in many cases having mental health issues where they don't even know they're suffering? How do you strike that balance?
Right. And once again, I'll raise the fact that the population of unhoused is very, very diverse. And so if you are talking about people who are profoundly mentally ill, that is a situation, because they might not know they need help. They might not know they don't have clothes on. They might not know they're in the middle of the street. And you absolutely cannot let somebody hurt themselves if it's obvious that that is what is going to happen. But what happens in the majority of cases is you have outreach workers who talk to people, who show them what their options are. And in Los Angeles, like I imagine a lot of other places, people literally choose to be in a tent rather than in a shelter because they know that the shelters are not safe. So this has required us to have new type of thinking for how you get people off the street.
Let's pause there for a second. Shout out to K Steady QB. Private companies only care about profit. Housing needs to be built and maintained by public funding. Exactly. Case gets it. Case gets it. Let's talk here about what she said about people choosing to sleep in a tent instead of the shelters because the shelters aren't safe. It's not just because the shelters aren't safe. It's also because the shelters have strict rules. There are some homeless shelters that don't allow children. So she just told you that the homeless population in LA also includes children. Well, if you have a child and the homeless shelter doesn't allow kids, you can't stay there. Just a reality. There are also some shelters that have curfew. So let's say you're homeless, but you have a job. And yes, those people do exist, not just in LA, also here in Boston. Let's say you're homeless and you also have a job, but let's say your job is in the evening. Let's say you're a bartender. Let's say you're a waitress. You may not make curfew to get back into that shelter. There's a lot of things that go along with this that people don't know. So when people say just go stay into a shelter, it's not that simple. It's not, especially if you have kids.
Which is why motels and hotels is an option. You know, I worked in healthcare for a long time. I worked in the emergency room. I worked in the psychiatric emergency room. And I saw people who were brought into the emergency room. They were medicated, they were treated, and then they went to a facility that was not a locked facility, but a lot of these organizations, community groups, drug treatment programs don't exist right now. The cutbacks have been so severe that if you want residential drug treatment because you've been addicted on the street for several years, you get 30 days. Nobody gets clean and sober in 30 days.
The way that they have been framing this conversation in reference to the homeless population has been around mental health and has been around addicts. Not once in this discussion that they've had have I heard them mention anything about the people who are homeless because they are evicted. The people who lost their jobs, people who were evicted in the pandemic, during the pandemic, people who were evicted after that eviction moratorium ended. Those people do exist. And so I have to add that, and I know I say this a lot, you guys, but I have to stress to people, it is not just people who are mentally ill and people who are addicts that are homeless. I actually saw this in a documentary, not in LA, but this was actually in Seattle, where there were homeless people. They were living in tents underneath a bridge in Seattle, and those people had jobs. They got evicted, one paycheck away from being evicted, and that happened. So they were living in a tent. Now you have to raise up the money again to be able to get an apartment again. And just imagine how expensive it is to live in cities like Seattle. So this is the point. They're not mentioning this at all. They're just making it seem like it's just mentally ill people and people who are addicts that are homeless. And that is not true. Now, I told you that some people have a problem with her plan. So I want to make sure that I mention the cons about this as well. Now, listen to this. Now, this is from the LA Times. I figured let's be local. Let's do the damn thing. A lot of LA tenants will be evicted February 1st. How will Mayor Bass handle that? Now, you guys see in that discussion that she had, not once did they mention evictions. Let's get into it. To the editor, I agree with Mayor Karen Bass that a state of emergency needs to be implemented to tackle the myriad of problems associated with the homelessness in the city of Los Angeles. However, how is Bass going to prevent thousands of people from being pushed into homelessness when the emergency tenant protections end February 1st, 2023? And evicted tenants will end up on the street. How will the mayor and other city officials urge landlords to accept housing vouchers like Section 8? Remember that time? We played that clip on RBN where it was Maxine Waters, and there were all those people who were homeless. They had been evicted, and they showed up, and they said they needed their housing vouchers. And Maxine Waters said, there is nothing that we can do for you today. Go home. And they said, we don't have a home. She told homeless people to go home. This is what they're referring to, those housing vouchers. Let's go back in. Landlord discrimination against tenants with housing vouchers is a violation of state law, but ample evidence shows the law is not being enforced. Certainly in the short term, steaming access to hotels and motels for temporary housing is a good idea, but in the long term, low-income permanent housing is extremely scarce and brittle and recalcitrant. Interesting. Brittle and recalcitrant reasons why people become homeless in the first place must be addressed. And they didn't address that in that interview at all either. Why are people becoming homeless? So this idea that she has about putting them into motels, that's a short-term fix. I talked about this a couple months ago when they first introduced this. That's short-term. What are you going to do in the long term? They go on to say, I voted for Bass, who has made homelessness her top priority, and yet a homelessness encampment outside LA City Hall was cleared before her inauguration on Sunday. As an English teacher and author for more than 40 years, I am at a total loss for words. Hypocrisy, stupidity, narrow-mindedness, nothing can describe this. This could have been such a spectacular photo op for her first day. She becomes mayor and instantly walks among them, promising to help. Now, I think that that's just typical politics though, right? Right? That's what they do. They pretend like they're gonna help, and they don't. That's nothing new. That is nothing new. But I wanted you guys to see that, because I don't think this is not a long-term plan. Long-term, this is not going to work. They're going to have to come up with something else. Seriously. And they have to address the problem. Why are people homeless in the first place? The causes. So I'm sorry that that person who voted for her thought that something good was going to come here, but here we go again. Here we go again. Notori says they're always talking about it's hard to do stuff for the American people, but they can send billions to other countries. That's right. Ahmed, is that 69,000 homeless in the city of Los Angeles or LA County? I think that's Los Angeles. I'll have to double check that. Hector says mental health and homeless is around 15%. See, there you go. Raziel the Great, Karen Bass equals Lori Lightfoot with the better hairline. Raziel, why did you do? JB says tax the F out of those rich people in your city and house the homeless. That's another thing that could be done as well. Implement a millionaire tax, just like we did in Massachusetts. Come on, California has tons of millionaires and quite a few billionaires, I've heard. Implement that millionaire tax. There you go. That solves your problem. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. There was one more I don't know where it went. Yeah, this one was kind of funny. Mastermind said, what do we want? Mints on our pillows. When do we want it? Not after 10 p.m. There you go. There you go. He gets it. He gets it. We're going to go into this story here about Kshama Sawant and DSA. Now, where do I begin? If you haven't seen the interview of Bad Faith with Kshama Sawant, BRIE, and Ryan Grimm, you should see that interview. It got a little heated during that discussion. And Kshama Sawant, was just pretty vocal about the fact that, like, you cannot sit here and defend people who are now strike breakers. You can't do that. Now, for those who are not aware, Kshama Sawant is a member of Socialist Alternative, but she's also a member of DSA. DSA wasn't too happy with Kshama Sawant's statements about the strike, the railroad strike, and the strike breakers. So one caucus of the DSA called DSA North Star decided to voice their opinion. This is not a good look. So here's what they said. Let me show you what she said first, actually. So Kshama Sawant said all but one of the squad crossed the picket line, voting with dim Republican majority to break a rail worker strike. A socialist cannot be a strike breaker. This should result in expulsion from DSA. Failing that, the squad's betrayal of workers becomes DSA's betrayal. This is something that I argued as well. I mentioned this on Rising, that they need to be removed from DSA. Just putting it frankly. And I explained to you guys why, and Ryan Grimm was here the other night, and I explained to him why they need to be removed from DSA. And I showed him DSA's principles. This is why they need to be removed. They're not following any of this stuff. Like I made it very clear, it's not just about what happened with the rail workers. It's about all the other DSA principles that they have not been following. It's about the foreign policy principles, choosing not to back BDS and choosing to back the state of Israel. That is actually a DSA policy, that you were supposed to support the Palestinian-led movement. Supporting defund the police and not funding the police. That is actually a DSA principle. There were multiple things that they are not doing. So Kshama Sawant spoke out about this, and she's 100% right. You cannot betray the workers. Now, Ryan Grimm and I, we had a difference of opinion on this, but I told him, according to the definition and according to DSA's principles, they did betray the workers, because you are not supposed to be a strike breaker. Now, again, DSA North Star, which is a caucus of DSA, this is what they had to say. Openly organizing your ultra-left cult within DSA is an expellable offense. Entryism is forbidden by our bylaws. Disagreeing with ultra-left positions on things is not an expellable offense in a democratic socialist organization. Look at this, guys. Let's go on. They changed this. They changed this. This had way more. They got ratioed in this when I first saw it. Now, obviously, this is not good. Look at the comments. Took you 11 days to find the worst possible take. DSA Scab Caucus. Kshama is right. There has to be a line, and breaking a strike should be well over that line. Look at yourself, for Christ's sake. Strike breaking should be an expellable offense. Like, this was not a good look. Just wasn't. And I'm going to show you the one. So we go to DSA North Star. DSA North Star, the Caucus for Socialism and Democracy within the Democratic Socialists of America. You look at their page. This is so embarrassing. Let's see if they put anything else up since then. Because they were ratioed pretty bad in that. Republican. So they retweeted this. They're still coming after Kshama Sawant. This from Kshama is deeply disappointing. People dismissing perspectives of rank and file leaders claiming to know the true interests of the workers are really telling on themselves. No, I interviewed the workers on this show. The workers made it very clear to me that they did not vote for this contract. This is not what they wanted. They made it very clear to me that 55% of them opposed it. They made it very clear to me that they wanted to go on strike. Why are people still coming back and saying, well, for her to just ignore what the workers are saying? I talked to the workers. I spoke to the workers, not the union leaders and not the president of the union that they just removed, by the way. To double down. to double down. When I responded on this, to this tweet actually, I said, so let me get this straight. You think that you should remove Kshama Sawant because the stupid reason that they gave here. Let's put this back up here. Actually, I should just go to mine. Because of this reason, openly organizing for your ultra-left cult may be an expellable offense. What cult? To me, it seems like DSA is the cult. That's what it seems like to me. So they're probably trying to talk about socialist alternative. So they're willing to discuss expelling Kshama Sawant, at least this caucus of DSA is. But they're not willing to expel the members of the squad who are not following the DSA principles. Make that make sense, ladies and gentlemen. You're willing to expel the person who wants to stand with the workers, but you're not willing to expel the politicians in DC who voted to stop a strike. What does that say? What does that tell you? So I had to ask myself, I had to do a little bit of digging here, because I wanted to know how DSA took this as well. So let's look at this. This is from World Socialist website. Look at what they had to say. Democratic Socialists of America scramble to defend its role in imposing rail contract. And this is a big part of the problem here, this part, socialists. When they call themselves socialists, they are not socialist. I've been saying this over and over again. So this is the piece I want to mention here. Together with Bernie Sanders in the Senate, the DSA-backed caucus introduced a separate resolution to give railroaders 7 days paid sick leave. This was purely political theater to provide the Democrats with political cover. It had no chance of passing in the Senate, which I told you guys about this, and I told Ryan Grimm about this, over opposition from Republicans and even 8 right-wing Democrats such as Joe Manchin. And it was crafted in such a way that this passage in the House, but rejected in the Senate, would not even delay the signing of an anti-strike law. Now listen to this piece. The role of DSA shocked and angered many of its own members, which included sincere but politically inexperienced youth who joined in the belief that DSA was a genuinely socialist organization. The DSA leadership, meanwhile, is in full damage control mode. The DSA political committee issued a statement Monday titled "Stand with the Rail Workers, Build Worker Solidarity," which was in reality wholly devoted to whitewashing the role of the DSA in illegalizing a strike by railroaders. Now, they go on to talk about how Rashida Tlaib voted the correct way. They go on to mention how Cori Bush and AOC did not vote the correct way. So DSA mentioned that, and they mentioned that in this article. But listen to this piece. The DSA is trying to cancel out public perception of its support for the anti-strike law by citing its support for adding 7 sick days to the contract that Congress voted to impose. But even if this fig leaf had passed, it still would not have changed the fact that DSA members voted to strip workers of their democratic right to strike, which is a far more fundamental issue than sick days. And that is the problem. So the question that I did ask, why is it they're not removing members from the squad? There was this discussion a while back over them trying to decide if they wanted to remove Jamal Bowman because he took that trip to Israel, which is also against DSA principles. But they didn't do it. I'm going to show you why. DSA has been around a lot longer than some of us may remember. Because DSA has been around since the 1980s, but their membership wasn't large. But something happened that changed that. Now, this is on their own website. This was back in 2016. I'm going to show you when their membership numbers jumped. Listen to this. Since 2015, when the Sanders campaign began, DSA's community-based chapters have nearly doubled. When the Sanders campaign began, their chapters nearly doubled. Today, we have over 42 locals and organizing committees, up from 26 over a year ago. Last week, YDS admitted its 20th chapter, the largest the youth section has been in nearly 2 decades. Follow me here. Walk with me, guys, because I'm going to show you some numbers. This is on top of nearly 2,500 new dues paying members since the Bernie race started. At our 2015 convention, DSA had a little over 6,000 members. Now, remember, this organization has been around since the 80s. 6,000 at the 2015 convention. Now, we have over 8,000 members and are still growing. The organization experienced triple the normal monthly membership signups during the Sanders campaign. This is on their website. Now let's look at a little bit of data. Because yes, we're going to go there. We are going to go there. I want to show you just how fast, not how fast, but just how much they have grown since then. Check this out. Here's a graph. Since 1982, let's make sure you guys can see the whole thing. Okay, you can. This organization started in 1982. You can see along the way throughout the 90s, they were increasing members a little bit. Looks like it dips a little bit here when we're starting to get into 2010. And whoop, wait a minute. What's that? What is this bump? Bam. Why are we all of a sudden growing? So what is happening? Where did all these people come from? 2015, Bernie Sanders campaign. Boop, all the way into 2020. All the way into 2020. All the way into 2020. Since 1982, this is what kicked up their membership. It was the Bernie Sanders campaign, and that's what made their membership grow the way that it has. And you can add in the squad, add them into that too. So you had Bernie Sanders, 2016. You had the squad, 2018, running 2018 and winning and coming into office 2019. Not all of them, but some of them did win. Then you have others coming in. Then you have 2020. You still have the squad, and you have Bernie Sanders running again for 2020. This is why they will not remove them from that organization. This is what I was trying to explain to people before on Rising. You remove those members from the organization. What does DSA mean anymore? It is a part of their brand. That's how they got so many chapters. That's how they got so many members, because before Bernie Sanders campaign, as you can see, since 1982, nothing was happening here. Nothing was happening. You see this? I would like to see what happened after that, because I know they have been losing members. They are now relying on these progressive politicians for their organization. It is a part of their brand now, you guys. Now, I told you again, Kshama Sawant is a part of DSA and she's a part of Socialist Alternative. That's not uncommon, by the way. There are people who are a part of both. But if they really want to try to remove Kshama Sawant from DSA, that would also be a terrible idea. Terrible idea. And that would be bad for that organization. But DSA has been sus. I tried to tell you guys this before. I've met with DSA members here in Boston, and I'm trying to tell you a lot of these chapters, at least in my area per se, these DSA chapters are not representative of working class people. Very few Black people. It's mainly PMCs and college students that go to Harvard, Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern, although I went to Northeastern. But you see what I'm saying? That's what this organization has become. Was it like that in the 1980s? You see how these organizations, they just change? So that caucus, this is where national DSA should step in and say, you need to remove that tweet. You need to remove it. What are you guys doing? But national DSA is unreachable. I know I've reached out to them. I know other people who have way bigger platforms than I do have reached out to them. Forget it. Forget it. If it had not been for the Bernie Sanders campaign, most people today would not know what DSA is. Just like I didn't know what the hell it was before Bernie Sanders campaign. So that is what they are relying on. But they want to kick Kshama Sawant out. At least that caucus does. That is the dumbest idea. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't. Let me go to some of the comments here. Oh, I said that one already. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. Steve says, I joined DSA at the beginning, but have been very disappointed. And remember, people pay dues to these organizations. It's not like people just hanging out. And I mean, DSA to me, it seems to be, if they're not going to uphold these principles and you're going to come at people like Kshama Sawant for speaking out and saying what she said, then this is not really a political organization. This is a social club. That's what it is. Social club full of PMCs, college kids, fighting for working class issues with no working class people. That's what it is. Case in point. Marnock says, I say Sabby let DSA proceed with the kick. They lose so many supporters if that happens. They really would. They really would. Let's check Rockfin really quick. And then I want to get to our next story, which is going to lead us into the call-in discussion. All right. Roger Meadows, what is up? Let me make sure I didn't miss. Okay, I didn't. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I'm going to make this bigger. I guess if you make it bigger, go back up. Union leadership selling out members. Look forward to telling you what happened on Zoom with the author of New York Healthcare Act and Senate Chair Health Committees tonight. Sab, did you put your appearance on Fault Lines on your Twitter page? I did. I mentioned that earlier this morning. They're on Rumble, so you can still see it on Rumble. Thank you for this tip on Rockfin, Dave. Have people already decided to leave? Maybe. Let me know which building you're talking about. I am ready to start going. I'm ready to start going on. Oh, going on the people going. I'm sorry, I can't see it. Oh, going on the building in Boston that got hit and people may be leaving. Let's see if I can do anything with others here if possible. Thank you so much for that, Dave. When I think of brothers like Eric Adams, I'm reminded of Bill Nunn's character in Mo Better Blues, who kept repeating the words, "What's wrong with that brother?" Someone should let Bass know she can help bring to the finish line the establishment of the municipal bank, Public Bank of LA, that was passed out of the Economic Development and Jobs Committee in LA City Council, tempering speculation and build more low-income housing. Thank you for that tip, Roger. And thank you for this one as well. What she can do is also outlaw private equity from owning housing. And while you're at it, medical institutions such as hospitals, clinics, dialysis centers, nursing homes, and municipalize them while fully financing them by drawing from surplus that the Municipal Public Bank of LA will provide. And thank you for this tip as well. Sab, I'd like to answer Bill Bradley's question regarding unions don't need startup capital, unlike worker co-ops who need it. Would you be so kind to put this link in the chat that shows an amendment to small business admin that gives startup co-ops same access to resources as small businesses? Yes, I can do that. Bill, this is for you. Well, and for the rest of you guys too. Thanks so much for that, Roger. Okay, let's get into our final story tonight. This is actually going to be the call-in discussion. We need to talk about what's happening with Matt Taibbi ever since he put out those Twitter articles, because those Twitter files, because I told you guys a couple days ago that he was being smeared on Twitter. What I saw recently is that it's not just people on Twitter that have been smearing him. It has also been one of the most popular publications in the United States that also smeared Matt Taibbi. Now, this is just bad journalism, and that was the Washington Post, believe it or not. Now, Walter Kim caught this, some others as well. This was the one that I saw, and I'm glad he took a screenshot of it because they did edit the article. But this is poor journalism. Wait till you see what they said about Matt Taibbi. Walter Kim said, "This is baldly inaccurate. Matt Taibbi is not a conservative journalist, as anyone familiar with his work knows." Now, he put the screenshot here. This is, again, from the Washington Post. As head of trust and safety at Twitter, Roth was involved in many of the platform's decisions about what posts to remove and what accounts to suspend. His communications with other Twitter officials have been posted in recent days as part of what Musk calls the Twitter files, a series of tweets by conservative journalists Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss. I kid you not, guys. I'm so glad they pulled the screenshot. By conservative journalist Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss. This was published. I'm not sure how many people read this article before it was changed. Now, that's coming from the Washington Post, which is supposed to be a trusted news source. Interesting now. Isn't that interesting? They don't want people to trust independent media, but we're supposed to trust them. They can't get their facts straight. So, that was posted. Conservative journalist Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss. Kill Yuri Gorgis, Matt Taibbi conservative. Yeah. What I want to know is, where on earth did they get that information from? Like, who told them that? Where did they get their source from? So they did edit this, and I'm going to show you. I know they edited it. Let me show you how. This is the article that screenshot comes from. Twitter dissolved Trust and Safety Council. Now, I want to take you down to that very same paragraph. Let's go down here. I want to make sure I get the right. I should have just highlighted it. It was so much easier if I would have done it that way. But I know it's towards the bottom. Here it is. Here's that same paragraph. As head of trust and safety at Twitter, Roth was involved in many of the platform's decisions about what posts to remove and what accounts to suspend. His communications with other Twitter officials have been posted in recent days as part of what Musk calls the Twitter Files, a series of tweets by journalists Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss. Look, a series of tweets by journalists Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss. Notice conservative is now removed. How do I know that was removed? If you go back up to the very top of the article, always pay attention to this, by the way, if you're reading an article. Published December 12th, 2022 at 7:26 p.m. ET. Updated December 12th, 2022 at 10:57 ET. So apparently they got a lot of flack for having incorrect information, and they went back and edited that article. So that's that. But even after they edited the article, Matt Taibbi is still being smeared as conservative. Still being smeared. In fact, Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie had a discussion about this on Rising. Listen to this. I'm telling you, I'm not making this up. It is absolutely ridiculous.
All right, Brianna, what's on your radar?
Well, Robbie, the story about the Twitter files has largely become a story about how the mainstream media is responding to the Twitter files, which is ironic because the story at the core of the Twitter files, the Hunter Biden laptop story, was a case where the media reaction became more newsworthy and more troubling than the story itself. Instead of substantively engaging with the content of the files, many mainstream media figures have taken to making attacks on the character or motives of the journalists entrusted with the leaked documents or provided documents. The Washington Post characterized Matt Taibbi, an independent journalist who identifies as liberal, as conservative, an error which was corrected after an enormous amount of Twitter backlash. This is a guy who has written a book about Trump called Insane Clown President, a book condemning Wall Street corruption and another detailing the tragic death of Eric Garner. Disagree as I do with some of his takes about culture issues, but conservative is a stretch in anyone's book. Other journalists, like Puck News' Julia Ioffe, raised complaints about Taibbi's past misogynistic statements he since contextualized as satirical, but which, even if taken at face value, don't bear on the newsworthiness of internal Twitter documents.
And I will also add, he had apologized for that as well. Go ahead and hit that like button, guys.
Journalist and frequent contributor at The Root, Michael Harriot, argued that it's only because Taibbi is white that he finds the disclosures newsworthy, tweeting, Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk rummaged through millions of emails and Slack messages from pre-Musk Twitter, and all they found was employees deliberating and consulting with each other about how to fairly apply and enforce rules. But I get it, to a rich white man, that seems very oppressive. The purpose of coding Taibbi this way, as a conservative, a sexist, and a racist, is clear. The smears are intended to deflect from the hard question of whether Twitter has, in fact, been a tool of the establishment, both Democrat and Republican, and whether liberal journalists, in particular, turned a blind eye to that reality when the bias seemed to benefit them. And we'll get more to that substance in a moment. But regardless of how you judge Taibbi's past statements or Bari Weiss's politics, which are quite different from my own, it's possible to judge the value of the reported news on its face. And in fact, I think it's our obligation to do so. To that end, I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the disclosures related to shadow banning, or what Twitter calls visibility filtering.
Let me just add really quick here for people who are not aware, because we did cover this, but I just want to add this as well. The reason why Matt Taibbi is getting a lot of heat about this is because he revealed information that, well, him and Barry Weiss revealed information that Twitter was suppressing and shadow banning what it appears to be more so right-wing accounts. Now, I did say earlier in the show, and I told you guys back then when we first talked about this, I know for a fact that anti-war voices, anti-imperialist voices, leftists, progressives, socialists, Marxists have also been suppressed on Twitter. But what Matt Taibbi has said is that in the information that he received, the documents that he received, that is not what was found. So I just want to add that in there for those of you who are not aware. But the reason why people are attacking him is because he's showing that conservatives were suppressed, but liberals were not suppressed. But again, he's saying he's just revealing the information that was given to him, and that is what he found. So these smears, like I told you guys, they were coming for people. You see them smear Jimmy Dore as right wing. They smear those of us at RBN as right wing. I've been smeared as right wing. I've never been right wing in my life. Anytime you start really heavily attacking the Democratic Party, they're going to smear you as right wing. And this is coming from people who are these blue wave, the people with the blue wave like picture and their headline, their Twitter bio, whatever. It's coming from those people. It's coming from other leftists and progressives. You criticize Bernie Sanders, you criticize AOC, you criticize the squad, you criticize Joe Biden of all people, because even some of the leftists are simping for Joe Biden. Once you start heavily criticizing, then all of a sudden they're going to say, oh, that person is right wing. They can't get anything else to stick, so that's what they go with. And I think it's just ridiculous. And in my mind, if I was right wing, I would just come out and tell you that. Why would we hide that? Here's something to think about. Why would we hide that? There's more money on the right than there is on the left. Hello. Especially if you're black. Let's go back in.
According to Barry Weiss, Twitter employees confirmed, quote, "We control visibility quite a bit, and we control the amplification of your content quite a bit. And normal people do not know how much we do." She explained that the group involved in making these decisions was called the Strategic Response Team / Global Escalation Team, and it handled up to 200 cases a day. But an additional group, which included the head of legal policy and trust, Vijaya Gad, global head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, and Twitter CEOs made, quote, sensitive decisions about high follower accounts and controversial users. Now, perhaps because libs of TikTok and other accounts highlighted in Barry's Twitter thread are conservative, this issue, like so many others, has been cast as a nothing burger. And because Twitter had already disclosed that it ranks tweets in search results, many commentators have argued that Barry misrepresented this disclosure as new news. The argument goes like this. If Twitter has always been open about the fact that it, quote, ranks tweets from bad faith actors who intend to manipulate or divide the conversation lower than other tweets, then Barry was being dishonest when she argued that Twitter lied about not shadow banning users. Okay. As Eric Levitz opined in New York Magazine, quote, Weiss did not try to reconcile that claim with Twitter's long-standing terms of service. In fact, she did not even inform her readers of the existence of those terms. But here's the problem. When Twitter claimed it didn't shadow ban, it did so by first defining shadow banning narrowly as, quote, deliberately making someone's content undiscoverable to everyone except the person who posted it, unbeknownst to the original poster. After offering that narrow definition, the Twitter post then went on to claim that Twitter doesn't shadow ban because people who follow you can always see your tweets.
But here's the problem. So this is the thing that we've been running into that you guys got to hear about, okay? People that I follow, this doesn't happen as much anymore, like since Elon Musk has taken over. But it used to be like people that I actually follow, I would never see them. For the most part, I would see like the same 5 people every day in my Twitter feed. The same accounts over and over and over. But I wouldn't even see the people that I followed sometimes. And they wouldn't see me either. Like, I'd have to go to their page and I don't remember everyone's, shoot me. I don't remember everyone's Twitter handle. It's a lot of people over there. There's a lot of people over there. So I don't remember everyone's handle. And it's frustrating. I get tired of seeing the same 5 people like every day. So that has improved since Elon Musk has taken over. But also to add to this as well, we were experiencing the shadow banning. We were experiencing it. And I mentioned this on Fault Lines this morning. I was stuck at 25K for a while. The moment Elon Musk took over Twitter, dude, within 2 days, I got thousands of followers. Where did all those people come from? That had never happened to me before. I never grew that fast. And right now, and I'm still getting them. That's how I knew I was suppressed. Last year, we actually checked this out. There was a site where you could check out to see if there was a ghost ban or shadow ban on your Twitter account. You put in your Twitter handle and it tells you if you are. And I was. And so was the RBN Twitter account. So was Nick, Socialist MMA. All of us, we were shadow banned according to that page. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I gotta say, I don't work for Twitter, but I am very online. And I have never believed shadow banning to mean that literally no one can see or find your tweets ever, which is how Twitter defined it narrowly. It's commonly understood to mean that your tweets are deprioritized significantly, so that users who aren't specifically looking for you are unlikely to follow you. And when I Googled it, I found a definition that seems to track my understanding. When I searched define shadow ban, this time in the context of Instagram, I got the following. Quote, basically shadow ban refers to the platform limiting your content reach by restricting visibility. Yeah, that gels with my understanding. And Twitter did that. It shadow banned by its own admission. It just refused to call it that. Gaslighting users by claiming it, quote, that, quote, we do not shadow ban. It's hard for me to believe that Twitter didn't understand the semantic game it was playing. But journalists like Levitz credibly accepted Twitter's narrow definition of shadow ban, which allowed it to claim that it does not in fact shadow ban. He accused Weiss of, quote, leading her readers to believe she'd caught Twitter in a lie. In other words, he wrote, she misled her audience. In fact, it was Twitter's policy that was misleading, and perhaps intentionally so. And for those of us who've noticed immediate and dramatic changes in our Twitter engagement following bouts of establishment criticism, those disclosures do, in fact, matter. Now, I am by no means saying that the journalists reporting on the Twitter files don't warrant some scrutiny. Certainly, it's worth asking if Bari Weiss's politics might incline her to, say, look more closely at conservative accounts that have been shadow banned, ignoring leftist ones. It troubles me that these documents were not made public so that we can ensure that the victims of Twitter's overreach aren't being selectively revealed in a way that confirms a liberal bias.
And some people didn't like the fact that the files were released on Twitter in like this long, lengthy Twitter thread instead of in like an article. But Matt Taibbi did explain that that was a part of the agreement, that when Elon Musk did reach out to them, he said, like, I want you guys to go through these files, tell me what you find. But the catch is you have to announce it on Twitter first. I think Matt Taibbi has went ahead and posted an article about one of them. So he has done that now. But in the beginning, the first post was supposed to happen on Twitter. I know some people weren't happy with that. Like I heard people like arguing, complaining like this is ridiculous. This is not professional, like that kind of thing. But you have to understand the terms of the agreement there. And then also, to Brie's point about Bari Weiss, that is something that could be a little bit different. I mean, I think maybe he chose the people that he chose is because if he would have chosen someone who was conservative and they found this information, then they would be like, the public would say, well, of course they're going to say that they're conservative. Whereas if you pick someone like Matt Taibbi, why would Matt Taibbi try to favor the conservative side in any way, shape, or form? He wouldn't, right? So, he's giving you what he actually found. I mean, Matt Taibbi isn't just a journalist, like he's an author, like he's written books and he was well respected in the journalist community. And now all of a sudden, some people really lost their shit. Like people who really liked him that were leftists are now like, oh my God, Matt Taibbi's right wing. Everybody's right wing now. And I'm like, this is what I say about the parties, the political parties. They make people lose their mind. Like, don't get so trapped in your cult that you can't see the forest through the trees. Let's not go there.
But I suspect the bias is centrist in nature. Note that Matt Taibbi revealed that the World Socialist website has also been a victim of this kind of suppression.
Yes.
It's also fair to ask whether Weiss's Otherwise, history of trying to silence voices critical of Israel might bias her against reporting speech restrictions on left pro-Palestinian accounts.
That's true.
But it is also true that regardless of the spin either journalist could conceivably put on the disclosures, the Twitter files themselves, the raw email data is of relevance. And focusing on the news bearer is a convenient deflection from inconvenient truths. There's a reason we're warned proverbially not to shoot the messenger. Now, journalist and former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders, David Sirota, hosted a conversation with Matt Taibbi on his live call-in show yesterday. And there he expressed empathy with Taibbi's position. And I, for one, am not surprised. Sirota, too, has been coded as sympathetic to the right and antagonistic to the interests of liberals. Why? Well, for the crime of reporting news that's of interest to the left, even if it owns the libs. In 2019, he was
and David Sirota is mild on Democrat criticism, in my opinion. David Sirota doesn't go like hardcore against like the Democrats, or especially against like the squad. Like he's even said before, like, look, they're the best we have. Like, no, we're not going to do this third party thing. Like David Sirota's criticism on the Democratic Party has been somewhat mild, and they'll even say that about him.
Infuriated for reporting on the fact that Beto O'Rourke, who, remember, at the time the media was trying to pitch as like the better, younger Bernie, had lied about his no fossil fuel money pledge and voted for pro-fossil fuel industry bills. Democratic insiders, like then Center for American Progress President Neera Tanden, were furious and in now deleted tweets accused Sirota's reporting of being, quote, seriously dangerous. Again, the crime being, quote, a supporter of Bernie Sanders attacking a Democrat. Heavens to Murgatroyd. The crime always is attacking the establishment, and the punishment is being locked out of traditional media and political outlets. I don't think it's an accident that reporters like Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, and David Sirota ended up starting their own publications at the peak of their professional prowess. The mainstream media simply does not tolerate certain points of view.
No.
As a fellow independent writer, Freddie DeBoer pointed out in a recent Substack piece, quote, if you think that Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss are the wrong people to cover this story, perhaps you should ask yourself about the social professional conditions in media that have created a cast of outsiders who are the only reporters that many people trust.
That's right. And another thing to add here, too, let's talk about Tara Reid, because this is another thing that people have run into. Tara Reid was recently on Tucker Carlson's show. She'll be here Sunday, by the way. I'm going to do a special live stream on Sunday. She was on Tucker Carlson's show, and there were already people mad at Tara Reid, like, how dare you go onto that right-winger show? Oh, you must be right-wing. None of the other liberal mainstream media networks are inviting Tara Reid on to have her story told. They don't want to hear her story because it demonizes Joe Biden. So where else is she supposed to go? And this is something I think some people may not understand. It's not that Tara Reid is now all of a sudden on the right. Tara Reid is willing to go to the outlets to get her story out. And CNN and MSNBC are not trying to hear that story because it's something that makes Joe Biden look bad. They're probably pissed that it has come up again because of the release from the Twitter files. Tara Reid's another one that has been heavily suppressed on Twitter, and she's heavily suppressed on YouTube. I know this. I can tell this. So you have to go where you can get the story out. But the problem with these political parties is this idea that, like, you cannot criticize either the party you're a part of or the party people feel you should be a part of. You cannot criticize them because if you do, then you're an enemy, you're right wing, or you're a radical lefty. And if we didn't have these political parties, we wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have this cult-like mentality. It's interesting when they said DSA said that Kshama Sawant forming this little cult. You kidding me? You don't think the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is its own form of cult? This whole two-party system that has kept people in this struggle for years when we really should have been fighting against the people who have all the money? Come on. People have to wake up.
If the establishment media thinks it's only fit to cover this story, it should reflect on why it ignored the Hunter Biden bombshell that started it all in the first place.
Yeah, that's all very well said. I also noticed the Washington Post, calling Matt Taibbi a conservative. Look, you don't have to, right, if you don't want to say he's a liberal or a progressive because these words have changed and he's more associated with a kind of contrarianism, fine, but he's clearly not a conservative.
Right.
You can use more words.
You can use more words.
Use big words. You can take an extra sentence to explain the situation.
You know the words.
And that's something that happens, although I have to say mainstream media has been getting my ideology and my publication, Reason Magazine, where I also write, we are described every which way. I'm described every way. Sometimes it's conservative journalists, sometimes libertarian journalists, sometimes libertarian conservatives, sometimes we've been described as a Republican magazine. We don't support Republicans whatsoever. They just can't, they've always had trouble thinking outside a very narrow two-box view. And things have gotten even more complicated because now there's all sorts of people who used to be associated with liberals or the left or progressives who have had a falling out, and there's massive infighting in the Republican coalition. You might as well be a Democrat if you don't support Trump, for some people on the right. So these words don't have quite the same meanings as they used to, but man, do they wish it was simpler for them.
Yeah.
You guys see the problem with the political parties? This is the problem. Thank you for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Abolish all political parties. That is correct. Well said there, Roger. I have 2 quick shout outs to give, and then we'll go right into the call-in segment. We got to give it up for Rome. Rome has really been doing the thing. One of my comrades from RBN, he was in Flint, Michigan recently delivering water. So Rome said, we had a great time passing out water in Flint. It sucks. More people needed help. We couldn't give, but it's a start. We'll be back really soon. So there's Rome and his buddies delivering water to people in Flint. So if you see Rome on Twitter, it's at UnholyRom3. Go give him a thumbs up and tell him, that you appreciate his help. You appreciate what he does. Definitely well. Awesome. Also, really quick shout out. Ron Paclone sent me this. I don't want to forget. Retweet to sound the alarm. Congressional leaders are deciding as soon as today whether to advance the big tech antitrust bills. We talked about this on here with Ron Paclone a couple of times. Tell Schumer and McConnell and the president of the United States, it's time to rein in on big tech. So if you care about big tech, you guys, and I think a lot of you guys do if you're watching this, you can go ahead and sign this petition. I'll put the link in the chat here for you guys. Antitrustvotenow.com. So you can go ahead and handle that. That vote it was supposed to happen a couple months ago, but it needs to happen before the end of the year, before Republicans take back over the House. Now, we are going to head into the call-in segment. Let's go ahead and do the damn thing. All right. Okay, this is going to be episode 63, Matt Taibbi Twitter files smears. After the release of multiple Twitter files which show that Twitter was suppressing right-wing accounts, Matt Taibbi is now being smeared as right-wing. What are your thoughts? Do you believe leftists have also been suppressed? And of course, you guys know how we do this. You can talk about other topics that I brought up tonight as well, but should be a pretty interesting discussion. The link is now pinned to the top of the chat, so I'll see you guys over there. I just want to check Rockfin really quick one more time. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, looks like I am good on Rockfin. Okay. All right, let's head on over to call-in, guys. One more super chat from Roger Meadows. WAPO, stop worrying about Matt and run your failing biz. Oh, that's the other thing. I did see this earlier today, too. The Washington Post is about to lay off a lot of employees. A lot of employees. So, Roger, thank you so much for reminding me about that. Oh, man. Oh, man. All right, guys. I'll be back again tomorrow, Friday. Other than that, head over to Call In With Me. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.